Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here this morning and participating in today's hearing. Farm Bill conservation programs, as we all know, have generally generated wide bipartisan support in Congress and wide adoption amongst farmers and ranchers. The extensive participation in conservation programs, I believe, comes from the flexibility for individualized operations, incentives for locally led and voluntary efforts, and coordination with state technical committees. In regards to climate specifically, I think it's important, and my priorities would be to make sure that whatever we do is producer-focused, voluntary, not at the expense of other programs, and also make sure that we don't penalize our early adopters and things that are already happening. To that effect, I guess my first question would be to you, Mr. Connor. You know, for decades, producers across the Big First District, my district in Kansas, and the country have taken advantage of incentive-based programs by voluntarily making changes on their farms and ranches to be efficient stewards of their resources. Recently, and I'm starting to hear a lot from producers that have been implementing no-till practices for decades, but they would not qualify to participate in carbon market programs because their practice is not considered new. In some cases, these producers were told that they would need to farm conventionally for 2 growing seasons just to qualify for carbon market programs. Can you expand on the importance of voluntary conservation efforts and discuss why it's important for Congress, to make sure that we don't hinder or penalize our early adopters?
It's a great question, Congressman, and let me just say that the importance of these programs is really top line, and not only because they have been effective in the past, and as I noted earlier, these programs have solved many of the challenges that we have faced in American agriculture before, and done so in a way that, again, has been income enhancing. And that's the bottom line in terms of our recommendations, and we believe that can be done here. For the early adopters, this is something the Food and Ag Climate Alliance struggled with. I will just tell you that we ended up with a recommendation that simply suggested that there be a one-time payment in addition to what other subsequent payments may be coming down the pike, a one-time payment to those early adopters to compensate them for the work that they have done on their farms, and certainly not to penalize. And I would even add a worst-case scenario where they might tear up conservation practices only to be able to collect, for the new ones. And obviously that's just borderline stupidity to have that kind of policy in place. So we struggled with it. We came up with a recommendation, but it's certainly an area in the Farm Bill where we want to work with this committee to develop what is the appropriate compensation for those early adopters, because they need it and should get it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that and appreciate how producer-focused your organization and group is on these issues. I wholeheartedly agree. One last question would be for Dr. Outlaw. One of my top priorities in my role on this committee is protecting crop insurance. It's absolutely vital to our ag producers all over my district, all over the country. We want to make sure that we protect crop insurance so that producers can sustain their operations year after year, even in the face of uncertain weather. My question is, what do you consider the role of crop insurance to be when dealing with uncertain or extreme weather events, and how should crop insurance enter into the overall conversation we're having about climate practices?
Well, I think it's very involved. The weather patterns, local weather patterns, has helped define a farmer's APH, which helps define their coverage. And so crop insurance and conservation programs go hand in hand. The issue I have and what I testified to was that trying to link those together, in my opinion, is not a good idea. Primarily because you can always create winners and losers with programs, and if as an example, if your producers in your state are not able to take advantage of some of these programs, then they wouldn't get the premium discounts that some of the folks are suggesting would be out there. So I suggested in my testimony that people need to pay really close attention to trying to link these programs together. There are many programs and many outlets through USDA to get money to producers to do climate-friendly practices, climate-smart practices. It doesn't have to be tied to crop insurance.
Great. Well, thank you all. My time's expiring. With that, I yield back. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.